Hi, today we're going to learn how to write a perfect cadence. A perfect cadence for grade 3 has to be written in 4-part harmony. So there's several steps that we have to walk through. But first of all, let's think about what is a perfect cadence. A cadence is a way of ending a musical phrase. Some cadences are what we call perfect, and they return to the tonic, making the music sound closed or finished. Other cadences are more open-ended, like ending on the dominant chord. And then that way you are expecting something else to happen. So the perfect cadence is named perfect because it is such a direct ending to the tonic chord that it makes the music sound finished. So here's a little musical phrase. Let's have a listen and you'll see how it begins on the tonic chord here and moves through some melodic lines and then returns to the tonic. Here we go, let's have a listen. All right, so you can hear there that closure and the return to the tonic making the music sound finished. So what we're focused on is these final two chords. The perfect cadence consists of moving from chord 5, the dominant chord, and moving to chord 1, returning back to the tonic chord. We have a way of doing this in 4 voices and 4-part harmony so that the voices move smoothly. So you can see apart from the bass voice that needs to move from the root note of chord 5 to the root note of chord 1, but the other voices move very smoothly. So we're going to examine how we can go about that, and that will help you to answer the 3rd grade question, how to complete a perfect cadence. All right, let's go through the steps. First of all, here are the 2 triads, the 2 chords. We have chord 5, and here are the notes for chord 1. So it'll be good to examine those so that we can see the various parts of the cadence in the triad. You do need to know how to voice a chord in 4-part harmony. So that is a prerequisite lesson and skill that you should know. If you're not sure about that, you can still follow these steps and you'll still be able to get to the right answer. But that is a pre-lesson that it would help if you looked to completing that first. So, but that's okay. We can walk through the steps here and you'll know what to do. So first of all, we start with the obvious part, and that is the bass voice. The bass voice moves from the root note of chord 5. So the bass voice uses the root note of chord 5, moving to the root note of chord 1. All right, so that's G. The chord of G is chord 5, and then we have the C, the root note of chord 1. So that's pretty straightforward for the bass voice, and you can add that straight away. The next important part is the leading note rising to the tonic. So you will notice that in the dominant chord, it contains the leading note of the scale. So in this case, we're in C major. So the leading note of the scale is the note B. B is the leading note. It's a very effective note because it has this natural pull to wanting to move towards the tonic, as we witnessed when we listened to the cadence before. You'll notice how I had the note B at the top in the soprano voice moving to the tonic, and that helped make the cadence sound closed because we had that semitone step of the leading note moving to the tonic. So that's our next step. So we'll get here the right voice, and we're going to put in, I'm going to give it to the soprano so that it's at the top, and then it will be very noticeable and an ideal way to voice the perfect cadence. So there we have the leading note of the scale, the leading note, which is the third of chord 5, moving to the tonic, and it's a simple step up. All right, so 7th note of the scale moving to the 8th, or the tonic note. All right, now you'll notice that these two chords have a note in common. They both have a G. So that's really useful for filling out a perfect cadence, because we can give the note in common to one of the voices. So in this simple formula, I'm going to give the note in common to the alto voice. So I've got the soprano there. Those stems will change in a minute because the soprano stems need to go up. So I'm going to put in the note in common, and I'm going to give it to the alto voice like that. So we have the soprano at the top, and then we have the alto underneath on the treble clef, and then we have the tenor and the bass. Now I've already done the bass voice, so that leaves the tenor. And what are we going to do for the tenor voice? Well, we need to finish off the leftovers. So if we have a look at what we've got so far, I've done 3 of the voices. So we have the root note of the chord. We also have another root note. So we have the root note twice. That's fine. You can double the root note. And we also have the third of the chord. And you're only allowed to have one of the voices having the third. You can't use the third twice in 2 of the voices. So only one of the voices can have the third. So that's taken care of. But there's a note I haven't used here. I haven't used the 5th of the dominant chord, which is the D. So I haven't used that. So there's a leftover I haven't used. And you'll find that will fit very nicely. Oops, I used the wrong type of voice there. I'll just fix that. So that fits very nicely into the tenor voice there. And now what haven't we used in this chord? We have the root note of chord 1. We have the root note of chord 1 again, so we've doubled the root note. We have the 5th, but we don't have the 3rd of chord 1, which is the E. The 3rd is the middle note of the triad. So we have a leftover we haven't used, and I'm going to give the E to the tenor voice. So you'll see 2 of the voices are stepping up. We have a note in common, and then it's the bass voice that moves from the root notes of each of the chords. So it's a very simple step. You can put it into a formula. The 7th to the 8th, the leading note to the tonic. 5 to 5, these are scale degrees I'm calling out here. 5 to 5 is the note in common. And then D, the 2nd note of C major, going to the 3rd note of C major. 2 to 3, and then we've got 5 to 1 in the bass voice. I might even, just to make it look really wonderful, is move the root note of chord 5 up an octave so that it's stepping down. And so we have a nice contrary motion between the top soprano and the bass voice. So it's quite straightforward. You just have to walk through those steps. In grade 3, you are given a blank canvas and you have to write the cadence. So that makes it easy, so you can keep to your formula and make sure that you get the notes right. Now there are a couple of tricks that you have to be careful of. The main thing that people get wrong is that you're not allowed to have more than an octave gap between the 3 upper voices. So you can't have more than an octave gap between the alto and the soprano, and you can't have more than an octave gap between the 5th of the chord there, the tenor voice, up to the alto voice. So you have to keep them close together. So I'm going to try and see if I can complete the cadence. So you can watch it again. And this time in D major, and I'm going to show you how you can get into trouble a little bit. So imagine, okay, so I start with the bass voice, 5 moving to 1 in D major. Then in the soprano, I need my leading note rising to the tonic. Then I need my note in common for the tenor. The alto. Note in common. There we go. So you can see it can be quite quick once you know the formula, you can write it up quite quickly. And then for the tenor, what's going to happen if I do it down here? Right, so if I did the tenor here, now that's correct. E is the 5th of the chord, I hadn't used the 5th yet. And here is the F sharp, the 3rd, I hadn't used the 3rd yet. So there's the formula complete, but there's a big problem here. I have more than an octave gap between the tenor and the alto. So that's not acceptable, that will be marked wrong. So what I need to do is I need to move this tenor up an octave. Now that's okay because that's still in the tenor range. The tenor can actually go up to the G. So 3 ledger lines are above the bass clef. So there is room there. So if this were to get any higher, then maybe I could look at pulling these 3 upper voices all down an octave if it became too high for the tenor. So you have to be careful that you don't have more than an octave gap between the 3 upper voices. However, you will notice that there is more than an octave gap between the bass voice and the tenor voice. So that is okay. That is fine. So other key points to remember: make sure the soprano stems go up, alto stems go down, all on the treble clef, and then on the bass clef we have the tenor with the stems up and the bass with the stems down. So that concludes all the important features. So as long as you keep to the formula and work through these steps, then writing a perfect cadence should be pretty straightforward.